Well, good morning. My name is Susan Poser, and I'm the president of Hofstra. I gave a sort of introduction to the symposium at the last session, but I think I'm going to say it again since I think there's a lot of new folks in here, and maybe it's a good introduction to our marvelous speaker today. So I'll begin by thanking Provost Charlie Reardon and the Office of the Provost, most importantly, Athleen Collins. There she is, Executive Director of the Cultural Center, along with her staff, Carol Mallison and Janine Rinaldi, who oversaw organization and execution of the symposium from the very beginning all summer so that we could all be here today. Also, a hearty thank you to co-chairs of the symposium, Sasha Giordano, Russ Harbaugh, Jim Lee, Ted Siegel, who thoughtfully shaped the content of the symposium and chose the dozen or so panels that we are all going to enjoy. This is the 5th year for this symposium. It started in 2021, soon after I arrived at Hofstra, when I wanted to understand the schools and colleges here and find out what made them tick. So I asked that faculty from the schools put on panels talking about their academic programs and what they were most proud of in those programs. And this turned out to be a great way to kick off the academic year. So far, we have done a series of panels on symposium on sustainability. We did one on AI in higher education, and last year we did higher education in an election year. But this year, amid all of the disruption and uncertainty that is swirling around higher education as well as pretty much everything in this country, we decided to do something different and ask the faculty to go back to basics. In effect, think about why they chose the academic life to begin with. So we charged them to explore and share something about beauty they have found within their disciplines. There must be something of beauty that inspires a faculty member to build a career around studying and teaching engineering or journalism or business or history. Where is the beauty in these disciplines, the thing that drew them in, that continues to inspire their work, and that animates the question they asked and the knowledge they seek? So, I'm now going to read my introduction of Janet Echelman. And she is going to present the keynote for the 2025 Presidential Symposium called The Beauty of. And we are incredibly honored to have this incomparable artist here with us to present this lecture. Janet Echelman is an artist who builds massive sculptures out of textiles, knotted fibers, and sometimes water particles to create sculptures the size of buildings that literally move with the wind. Her work combines aspects of sculpture, architecture, urban design, material science, computer science, engineering, and performance, along with the ancient craft of net making and knot tying that were the original inspiration for this work. Dr. Echelman has been awarded the Smithsonian American Ingenuity Award in Visual Arts, the Guggenheim Fellowship, the Astman Institute Henry Crown Fellowship, the Harvard Loeb Fellowship, and a Fulbright Lectureship, and she was named an Architectural Digest Innovator for changing the very essence of urban spaces. Tufts University recently awarded her an honorary doctorate of fine arts for her public artworks. Her TED Talk, called Taking Imagination Seriously, has been translated into 35 languages and more than 2 million views. Dr. Echelman graduated from Harvard College and began pursuing her artistic career without any formal training in either sculpture or engineering. I think you'll probably hear about this today. Rather, her path seems to have been entirely determined by where her imagination and her creativity took her. And now her sculptures are defining urban landscapes around the world, and I won't go into all the places that they are, but again, maybe she will tell you about some of those. And today or tomorrow, we weren't quite sure, is the release date of her book called Radical Softness, The Responsive Art of Janet Echelman. And it will be available for purchase and signing after this lecture. And it is also the title of today's presentation. So please join me in a warm Hofstra welcome for Janet Echelman.
Thank you, Susan. It's such a pleasure to be here. I've worn Hofstra blue to greet you all today. Even matched my glasses. President Posen and I were having a really thoughtful conversation about what draws you as a student or a faculty member into your work, what sustains you throughout your life, all the assignments, the many challenges throughout. And I'm going to be talking about my own search for beauty, which in many ways is about a search within nature, looking for the beauty in a mathematical equation or the most essential way to solve the engineering of a problem without anything extra that isn't needed. But I'm going to take you back to my own personal story. As a child, I was involved in classical music. And when I was 14, I got my big break to play with the symphony orchestra in my area. And what I discovered is that I hate performing. In fact, it was so bad I was getting like real pain in my chest before every single performance. And it was clear that this was not a life that I wanted. So as that door closed, it opened up the door to college for me. But I should say that I'm a slow reader. And music got me into Harvard. But I came from a public school system in Florida, and I was really terrified. And I looked at all the reading lists and the papers, which I'm sure you all are making your way through. And I thought, I need at least one class that doesn't have a big reading list and no papers. And that is how I ended up in my first art class. This was the one required book, Letters to a Young Poet. And I will take a moment to read the letter that meant the most to me. And this really speaks, Dr. Posen, to what we were talking about being patient to the unsolved questions in your heart, how to love the questions themselves like locked books and books written in a foreign tongue. And what became clear to me was that I couldn't seek the answers because I wasn't ready to live them. It was about living the questions. The one major assignment for that course was to pick an artist and follow their whole life's trajectory. And I didn't know a lot about art. I picked Matisse because I thought his paintings were beautiful. What I discovered was that when, at the end of his life, in his 80s, he was confined to a wheelchair and his bed. And even in that situation, he invented a whole new way of making images, the cutout series. And I thought, that's the way I want to live, where at any point in my life, I am still on my learning edge. And rather than waiting for someone else to be posing those questions, I am the one responsible for making sure that I am alive and learning and growing. And also, no one can fire me. At that point, I graduated from college, and my mother and father, were asking me, what is it you want to do? And I said, I want to be an artist. And my father said, did any of your professors say you have talent and should pursue this? Long silence. Well, no, it's just the only thing I want to do. In fact, one professor had specifically said, you need another skill. So I went off for a year on a scholarship, and during that time I wrote home, and this time to my mother, and I said, I really want to be an artist. And she said, honey, that's a worthy goal. Go out and make 99 paintings, and here is a check for $199 to buy paint. Now, within that message, there was a lot to that message. Go out and make 99 paintings means that the first 98 can be kind of lousy. You know, like it was giving me permission. It wasn't about making the great American novel or solving the mathematical problem. It was about being engaged in the practice of searching for beauty. I applied to 7 leading art schools around the country. I thought maybe my Harvard graduate bachelor's degree was going to get me in somewhere. How many of those 7 schools do you think I got into? Guess. I heard 4. Anybody else? 2. One more? 1. 0. I was rejected by every single graduate school that I applied to. And that really made me have to confront the issue that if I was really committed to search for beauty in the practice of being an artist, I was going to have to become my own teacher or find teachers in different ways. And so I decided that I would apprentice to craft artisans and learn through traditions that had been passed down generation to generation. So I started studying weaving and ikat and batik, and I moved to Bali with $300 in my pocket. And I walked the rice fields till I found this little grass-roofed house you see here. And I began studying local traditions. This is batik, where you take hot wax and make a resist on the cloth and submerge it in colored dyes time and time. And this was my very first satisfying painting. It is made by dyeing the canvas. I'm going to fast forward 10 years I was painting, and then I applied to return to Asia on a Fulbright to India. And I shipped all of my paints and my very special brushes to begin work on exhibitions that the US Embassy had booked all around the country. They had actually paid to rent spaces in museums in 3 cities. And I'm teaching painting, and I'm waiting for my own paints to arrive so I can prepare for this, not like a big break for me to have these exhibitions as a young artist still. And it was now 10 weeks till the show, and I got the communication saying, we need the images of your art for the catalog. But I had no art. I had nothing. I had no materials to make the art yet. And I thought, I can't wait any longer. I've got to find, a plan B here. And I was in a fishing village, and it was known for bronze casting. So I thought, okay, I'm going to cast bronze for the first time. So I learned how to cast bronze from these artisans. But I only had like a dozen. It was now only 8 weeks till the show, and I had a dozen bronzes this big. And those galleries were bigger than this auditorium. And I thought, this is not going to work. If I have to scale this up to fill the space, I'm going to need how many kilograms of bronze? And I calculated this in my head, and I thought, I can't even afford to buy the raw material, much less to cast it and ship it. I don't know what I'm going to do. So every day after I finished working in apprenticing in the bronze shop, I would take a walk on the beach. It was a little fishing village, and I would just get some exercise with a long walk and a swim. And it was the end of the workday for the fishermen too. And every day I was watching them reeling their nets into mounds on the sand. And as I'm thinking through like how I don't have the money to buy the bronze, and how am I going to make volumetric form, I thought, oh, look at those nets. I saw them in a way, even though I'd seen them every day, suddenly I realized that's a way of making volumetric form without heavy, solid material. So I started working with these fishermen. This is my first satisfying sculpture. I consider it a self-portrait. Its title, Wide Hips. And then I quickly took these works, and we pulled them up into on the beach to take the photographs to quickly get this catalog done. And what I discovered was they started to dance. And it was a choreography that was never the same. It was constantly undulating and changing and billowing. And I was mesmerized. And I think the point I want to highlight to you, especially students, is that I didn't set out to be a sculptor of wind. It's that I was engaged with the materials, the methods, the environment, the culture around me. And by doing that, by making, that was the way that discoveries happen. So I was asked to do a piece for the largest art fair in Europe. So I went back to work with the fishermen. There are 8 families and myself, and this is a net of 1.5 million hand-tied knots. I stuffed it in my duffel bag. It weighed more than the allowable limit on the airplane as I checked in, and I actually just begged. And we got it to Madrid, laced it into the architectural railing on the roof deck. And in one weekend, more than 100,000 people saw the work. Now, one of them was the architect redesigning the waterfront in Portugal, in the city of Porto. And this is my visit that they invited me to see. They said, can you imagine how to bring your art to life in a permanent way? Well, I could imagine it like what you just saw, a fiction in a computer model. But I didn't know how to build it. I didn't have a material that could withstand salt air, hurricane winds, and ultraviolet light. And by the way, had to be built on budget and in a time frame that was set. So I went searching for a material. I actually bought a ticket to Las Vegas to the Industrial Fabrics Trade Fair Conference. And I just walked the rows of the trade fair, introducing myself, describing the project, and saying what I was looking for. And if, as luck would have it, it was the end of the trade fair that I found this fiber called polytetrafluoroethylene, which is the same thing as Teflon, what lines your fry pan when you cook an egg. Well, it turns out NASA also used it to coat astronauts' spacesuits, and it has this incredible ability to withstand the sun's rays, and yet remains soft and fluidly moving. But then they said, solve for us, you have to prove that you can withstand hurricane winds, typhoon winds of 90 miles per hour. Now, the way to solve that generally is a wind tunnel test, which costs many, many tens of thousands of dollars, which I didn't have. And so, not having the financial capital, I had to rely upon something else, social capital. You students have a lot of social capital, and you may not realize the value of that. I started asking my friends, how can I solve this problem? And one of them knew the director of the engineering department at Columbia University. And I went and asked, how can I solve this problem? And he said, ooh, I have bad news for you. It would take a doctoral student 6 months just to get up to speed to start to answer your question, because this is porous and fluidly moving, which is unlike any of the software that architects and engineers are using, except there is the sailing industry. He said he had read about this software for designing sails for America's Cup racing yachts. So I emailed and phone called to New Zealand asking if they would help me get this software. Well, no answer. I called a week later, no answer. I called the next week, no answer. Finally, I decided I am going to get up and leave a message on this voicemail every single day. And I did. And finally, I got an answer. She said, lady, we don't have the software, but here's the number of the guy who wrote it. Now, I was living in New York City, and the phone number was 212-64. The man who wrote it was down the street from me. And so we met. This is a page of mathematics that was part of the development of his software. His name is Peter Heppel, and he helped me solve the twin challenges of precise geometry with gentle movement. Now, the next problem that arose was that I had to make knots that were stronger than the hand-tied knots I had shown you. And so I needed these to be machine loomed with greater strength. And I went from factory to factory looking for one who would work with me so that I could make nets but use it to make lace patterns the way that my art needed. And I went factory to factory. Nobody wanted to waste time with this except for one factory. And I'm still working with them today. We had to create a new language to express to industrial workers how to make this art form of lace making and knot making. Then we needed to pull it up, something to hold it up in the middle of the roundabout. So that ring is 40,000 pounds of steel. After 3 years and the birth of both of my children, we attached what I was told is the largest piece of lace in human history. I couldn't believe my eyes that what I had imagined, just these ideas, these hunches, was now a physical reality. This is what my first visit to the site looked like, and this is what it looks like when you drive up the coast of Portugal today. It's 21 years later. And when I walked underneath it for the first time, I had this sense of being sheltered and at the same time free, because it was a covering above me, but I could still see the infinite space of the sky. And I knew my life was never going to be the same. This is my favorite photo. No, I did not take it. I found it on Flickr. What you can't see here is that it's a 3-lane highway roundabout and there's no crosswalk. So somehow people are being driven to have that experience of being underneath it enough to want to dart through traffic. And somebody said, go to Google Earth at the level where you see Europe and there's just one image representing each country and see what image represents the country of Portugal. I have no idea who took the picture, what their algorithm is, but it was so deeply meaningful to see that a culture had embraced and owned this work. My name is not even associated there, which I like. I'm going to just walk you through a lot of projects quickly to give you a sense behind the scenes. This is what was going to be built for the Vancouver Winter Olympics, and this is what I convinced them to do instead. It's called Water Sky Garden, and it's a Chinese neighborhood where they dance a red, colorful dragon dance every year. This is the construction of San Francisco International Airport's new Terminal 2. And this is every beating second. This is downtown Phoenix, Arizona, when I first came for a site visit, and they said, we want a signature artwork for our city right here in the middle of downtown. And I said, well, what's here now? Parking lots and a notorious strip club. And that place today, the title, Her Secret is Patience. And it is now the campus, this is the center green for the Arizona State University campus in downtown Phoenix. The search for beauty was about observing nature, seeing the motion of the wind, looking at the clouds and the way they cast shadows onto the ground, noting that if you there you can see those shadow drawings onto the ground from the sculpture, noting that if something of a scale change makes you bring your eyes up to the sky, that you see the world differently. And at night, the piece changes with colored light over the course of an entire year. In the summer, the color temperature is cooler. And in the winter, I use warm temperature colors. And by the way, that video that I was just showing you, I shot from the back of a bicycle rickshaw. And the man who was riding it told me that he now made his income this way thanks to the sculpture being there. Meaning is something that I'm still exploring. How can I give visual form to meaning, especially in a way that can bring us together in a public space, strangers, people from different ages, different educational backgrounds, different ethnic and religious backgrounds. At that time, I got a call from the city of Denver. They were hosting the Biennial of the Americas, and they had the 35 nations of the Western Hemisphere sending their prime ministers and presidents and teams, and they needed an artist to express the interconnectedness of nations. I had no idea how to do that. Honestly, I was pretty stumped. But I said yes anyway, just trusting that the process of research would find something of inspiration. And so I was just, spelunking on the internet, and I went onto NOAA's website. And there had just been a tragic earthquake in Chile, which you're seeing. They mapped the wave heights moving across the Pacific Ocean. And I thought, well, that is a very physical and concrete metaphor for something happening in one part of the world having ripple effects on all the other parts of the world, whether you see it or not. And so I wrote off to NOAA, just on the email on the website, not really sure that I would get a response. And I said, can you please share your data set? And because all taxpayers have a right to this public data, they sent it to me. And I transformed it to this. Now, what you can't see is the new challenge this presented my first time working with data was that the shape is really so much more complex, and it sticks out and comes back in a way that steel really is not suitable, because you'd have to make the steel so heavy and so big that it just wouldn't work. And plus, we didn't have the money for it anyway. And I thought, well, could I solve this in a new way? If I could find a really strong fiber, couldn't I just make like a grid, an XY axis, and then couldn't we just pick up points anywhere? I mean, I was thinking back to my high school math classes. And so we started figuring out how we would do that, and I went searching for a fiber again, and this time I found ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene. It is more than 15 times stronger than steel, pound for pound. And it turns out NASA uses this as well. The Mars rover is tethered with this because of its lightness to strength ratio. That is beauty, Dr. Posen, right? Isn't that beautiful? A material that can be so strong and yet so light. So we went to pretty old-fashioned, we're analog. We gridded up the shape, and it was off-season for hockey, so we asked the local hockey rink if we could use the floor. I brought blue plastic tarps like you get at the Home Depot, and we duct taped them together, and we gridded it up to make a full-scale template of this form. And then this became my first completely soft sculpture. And now that made it so light, it could literally lace into the fabric of the city. That's the Denver Art Museum. And because it was light, now it could travel in a box no bigger than this lectern. And it was lightweight, less expensive. So off it went to Sydney, Australia, over their busiest intersection. People were coming up out of the subway and like surprised at what it was. This is Amsterdam, where we discovered that boat traffic was its own new challenge to deal with. And light transforms this and brings people out in the winter to escape the isolation that winter generally brings. This is Singapore, Prague, Shanghai, Santiago, Chile, Montreal. You can see it in the day and then at night. Transforming cities. This place was a park that was full of syringes every morning. People were scared to walk there. And when you bring art and you bring programming, you create a sense of safety. The work continued to evolve. Here it is in Hong Kong. This is Munich, a This is the Odeonsplatz, which is a very heavy history where Adolf Hitler staged the beer push. And the German curator said to me, "We're creating a new history now." Every night they had live music underneath and people would gather. This is a permanent iteration in South Korea of this series, which I call the Earth Time series. So I felt like using a scientific data set to be a concrete reference point for getting at something really abstract, an idea like interconnectedness. This was working. And so I went back to NOAA, and this is the data set of the tsunami that hit the nuclear plant in Fukushima, Japan. Now, this for me was about being humble, because I know that the engineers and designers who built the seawall in Japan that protected that nuclear plant, they looked at the entire written record of tsunamis, the entire historical record. But it turned out the historical record only goes back a few hundred years. In literature, there was talk of a tsunami that went this far 1,000 years ago. So this is about thinking in the larger time cycles. So we've begun developing original software, computer software, in my studio with a team. And this was the early stages of that. And this is the 3D digital model that comes out of that software. And this is how we translate it into physical material and craft. And here's a close-up. You can see the knots. Even each twine, I braid all my own twine, and there are multiple colors in each segment of twine. Now this is in Washington, D.C. at the Smithsonian, in the Renwick Gallery. And it turned out there were all kinds of constraints for this piece. I had to design the piece for a show about wonder. Could have been beauty. Same thing in a way. But I had to leave the airspace in the hall empty from 0 to 14 feet because they rented at night to parties and weddings. And the other constraint, well, here you can see. So I pulled the sculpture up into the vaulted ceiling and then projected colored shadow drawings onto the walls as a way of engaging and filling the space with my ideas without having anything physical in 0 to 14 feet. They also said that it had to have a carpet, and they had this floral oriental carpet there. And I said, oh, I cannot have my art with a carpet, like that won't work. And the director said, but you must, because the Smithsonian String Quartet will only play in this space and you can't change the acoustics. You have to have a carpet. And I said, well, the only way I could do that then is if you let me design a carpet. And I'd never made a carpet, but I figured out how to do it. This is a carpet that is a topographical map of the sculpture, 40 feet by 100 feet. And here you can see what happens at night when they bring parties in to support the museum. But it was so exciting. People started lying down on the carpet. Pop-up weddings started happening. People were sharing these intimate moments. This one says, melting with art as we become part of the exhibition. I didn't even want to do a carpet. And suddenly it opened up a whole new way of working and bringing people inside the work. Even the First Lady of the United States Instagrammed it, saying that she was bringing delegations to learn about American art there. And I really wanted the Washington Post to write about the ideas embedded in this art. Instead, they wrote about how people were Instagramming the art. Well, some attention is better than none. The project, I wanted it to continue outdoors. This is London, the busiest intersection in London. The mayor closed down Regent and Oxford streets. And they had to make the tube, their subway, exit only because there were so many people they were worried about trampling. But what happened was really surprising. It was January, it was freezing, and people started lying down on the cold asphalt so that they could share the experience of watching the work unfold above them. And what you can't see is that it's also an experiment in democracy, because those colors are being selected by people on their mobile phones, and we're calculating in real time what percentage have picked red or turquoise or violet. And this is my team up there, and this is the computer mapping that they are doing to project those colors and democratic choice in real time. So this project just continued to grow with a commission from Spain for the 400th anniversary of the Plaza Mayor. And then traveling around the world, this is Dubai and the world's tallest building. This is Vienna, the museum quarter. This is Sweden, Helsinki, Finland. And these projects continue to grow. This is a personal artwork. This is my first piece about love. I wanted to explore in what was happening in my own life, what it meant to be touching, two entities touching at a point, but having airspace in between them, and where you could see how they were influencing one another through time, but you can't see where the influence starts and ends. So you see that white line or the red line jumping across the form, but it's unclear where it begins and ends. So they're two separate forms, but when you look at them, you also see them as one from certain directions. You can't even tell that they are separate. And this is the opening in Milan. The title of the piece is Noli Timere, Don't Be Afraid. Noli Timere, that was the last words that the poet Seamus Heaney, the Irish poet who won the Nobel Prize, he texted that to his wife just before he died. Noli Timere. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation had built their first and only global campus in downtown Seattle. They moved in and they reached out to me saying it needed a heart. Could I give their mission a visual form? And I honestly didn't know how to express something as big as giving every person everywhere in the world the chance for a healthy, productive life. I didn't know what to do, and I started to think, all I can think about with this is one day. What does it mean to wake up and see a day in its full color? I could be colorblind, I'd be alive, but not seeing the fullness of color. So I put a camera on the roof. These are photographs throughout a 24-hour period of the sky. I took the numerical measurement number of each color and graphed it in this radial manner. So that became the form, the shape of a day in its full color. And then I began playing with materials. This is wire and string, and then making computer models. And then I work with our engineers to understand the forces that would be needed when this is pulled into tension. Each rope is sized differently according to the force that it needs to carry, nothing extra. That's beauty for me. So here we are letting gravity make the netted form fall softly into space. And here you can see it on campus beginning to move with the wind, beginning to play with the water and reflections beneath it, play with the sky and the clouds and this interchange of being present in the world, letting nature flow through you and being part of it. And I was thinking that the light at night was going to be bold. That I don't know if you've ever heard, they used to talk about the British Empire, how the sun never set. Is that something you've heard before? I wanted to flip that on its head. This is about giving every person in the world a chance for a healthy, productive life. This is about the sun rising every day, to begin work. This is a problem we need to work on every morning with the rising sun. And I thought, these folks in this institution are doing that. And so I looked at sunrise in each of their offices, in each of the continents, and I began taking the color of sunrise and converting it into color pixels with LED lights in real time. So it changes, the time every day is different. And it's projected onto the sculpture. So they are literally connected to their mission. As the sun is rising, they're doing the work. And you can see it from the Seattle Space Needle, and you can look down, and every time you see one of those white lines come together, that's that really strong rope, 15 times stronger than steel, and that node is spliced by hand with a method that is centuries old. So we are using the newest technology and computer science and material science of humans right now, but we are combining it with old wisdom, old knowledge. And I think for me, it's a kind of integration. We're not going to lose ourselves and our history and our culture because of new technology. We're going to use new technology as tools to enrich our lives. The Sunset Strip in California. I wanted to create a dream catcher. How many people, when they were kids, did like a craft based on a Native American dream catcher? So I thought, what if we took the patterns of that and we created that as a structure between the two hotel towers? And at the time, I was having trouble sleeping. So in the middle of the night, I was on YouTube and I saw this video. This is your brain when you reach deep sleep. This is REM sleep. And I obviously wasn't getting any as I was looking at this video. And I thought, okay, I want dreams to be floating between these layers of dream catchers, between these hotel towers where people will be sleeping. I went to my engineers at SOM and they helped analyze each of these forms, and then we checked those computer models with physical models and corrected the computer models as well. And then as they poured the concrete slab of each floor of the hotels, we embedded our hardware so that it would be seamless and light, as if it's just floating in air between them. And here it is in the day. And then we checked our work at the end by doing a LiDAR scan to see if what we think we're doing, we are actually doing. Here's the model. Here's the real thing. And here it is at night. You can go up on that roof and have a drink at the bar. This is the One Hotel West Hollywood. This is a view out the hotel window. I think we have a drone video for you. So you can see how these forms, in the background, that's the Hollywood Hills. Individual identity is a new challenge, how to create intimate works in homes. This is a piece about a family and a couple. This is the computer model, and this is the built reality. And this is another private space, a home in Mumbai, India. And this is about a meaningful Hindu text, a quote called "Without beginning, middle, or end," based on the rivers of the world and the cycle of water evaporating, coming down as rain, becoming rivers, and becoming evaporated water again. There you can see those rivers. History is something I'm really exploring. How do you make history visible? This is downtown Boston. This was nicknamed the biggest parking lot in the world. How many people have heard of the Big Dig? Big Dig, largest public works project in American history. They buried that to create this ribbon of green, and they said, what would you do here? And my first thought was, I want to sew the city back together over this wound that cut it off from the waterfront. And they said, no, you have to pick one spot. You don't get the whole thing. And I learned that the ground was made of landfill when they cut down the Tri-Mountain. And so I put 3 voids in the middle of the piece. And here you can see the process in my computer modeling software. Each color is a different bobbin. So we're creating panels, sewing them together, and then creating a 3-dimensional form. But what's key is I have to understand it in the 3-dimensionality of the city in movement. Because you are moving, I am moving when we're in the city. So this is on your left is the output as a digital model, and that is a photo on the right from my phone. So how do we install it? 3 a.m., 7 cranes came in. It came out of its box and up to the 28th story of a skyscraper. This part of town, there was actually no electricity in the park underneath it in that spot. People never went there for lunch. But you can see people have started to lie down in the grass and bring their lunch there. That's between 3 a.m. and 11 a.m. And we think that habits are so hard to change, but maybe it's about creating the right environment. In one morning, people's habits changed. So we pull them up with chains, and we measure the forces on those points in live time. My engineer said that on his iPhone, he could constantly monitor the forces. It's designed for 100,000 pounds of force at a single point. That's that strong fiber and how important that is. So here you can see that there are 4 points connecting to the city, and it looks like it's attached to the facade of the building, but it isn't. My low-tech method is I remove the window, we pierce through the facade, grab a hold of the steel core, and then we just put a piece of temporary wood where the window was, because this was a temporary exhibition. And here you can see that it's moving in the wind. If you look carefully at the flag, you can see how chaotic the wind is, but over the large surface area, it smooths out the wind. And my friend who meditates a lot was lying down under it, and she meditated and then opened her eyes, and she said, it's as if the sky, I can see the sky breathing. And at night, the waiter who worked in a restaurant at the base of that building you can see there, he told me that like on a Saturday night, he would finish at like 1 a.m., and before going home, he would lie down in the grass and just watch the wind and the colors change before making his way home. I think that is why I do this work. That's the way I want to be part of life. In history, the state of North Carolina approached me. Could I help them celebrate their history of textiles? And I looked at maps of where all the textile mills had been, and they followed the path of the trains. And I started connecting the dots, and it looked like the seed pod I had found in the park there. And I thought, that is it. It's called Where We Met. And here you can see it. That it is geographically like a map. It tells you where the coast is and where all of the major cities and the railway lines are. And because they have ice storms there, we installed a winch system. So if you push a button, within 1 hour, a regular park staff member can make it go up or down just by the push of a button. And there you can see those shadow drawings and the interaction with the sky. I was given a site in Florida that I discovered was the site of swim-ins in the 1950s, and it led to the US Supreme Court ruling in 1957 that integrated beaches and pools in cities all over America. I was looking for the historic marker, and there was none. I could not find any recognition of how important this site had been. So I decided it needed a 600-foot historical marker called Bending Arc. And of course, I'm referencing Dr. Martin Luther King's speech talking about the moral arc of the universe bending towards justice, because this site was proof of that. A beautiful park, including and welcoming everyone. It's made of more than 1.5 million knots. It is designed for hurricane winds, and this is shot from an airplane. You can see how it welcomes people within it. And it blends with the sky during the day, and at night it becomes transformed with projected colored light. And what's kind of exciting is just watching daily life unfold. This is a drumming group, a photo I was sent, and it turns out that every Friday night they have drumming there now. And someone sent me this photo of community event under there. And when there were Black Lives Matter marches every Friday from City Hall, where do you think they chose to end the march and tell stories every Friday? They would get in a circle underneath the art. And the art was like a holding space for those stories. And when Vladimir Putin had the Russian army invade Ukraine, we turned the whole piece yellow and blue in solidarity. This is downtown Columbus, Ohio, day to night, talking about their history of illumination and arches in their downtown, stretching across. And these are privately owned buildings who are all cooperating to give the public, the civic space, something special. I'm playing with participation. This is the beach in Santa Monica, California. More than 100,000 people came in one night to this piece. But the social media posts were surprising. They're talking about being calm, quiet, and reverent. That's not what I think of when a mob of people come together. And the next day, I looked at the sand. I had sculpted the sand in one way, but the feet of 100,000 people created a completely new art form. This is downtown Vancouver, Canada, where I brought a piece in that we installed in the sky, connecting from the top of a hotel to its convention center. And here you can see the development further of our computer software tools. This one is being donated, the software from Autodesk, who make AutoCAD and Revit. And so here you can see the modeling, and now we're going to move into the real thing. And you can see how important that accuracy of having computer models is in order to build something at this scale in the city. Now, this is what it looks like when I light it with fixed LED lights. But I wanted more for this. This was the TED conference's 30th anniversary, and I wanted to invite each person to co-create, to paint with light. So through a partnership with Google, you could pick any color you wanted on your phone and make a movement, a gesture with your finger. So maybe you are the white color and I'm the violet color, and you can see our ripple effects are coming towards each other. And what was exciting, it's the first time it was a virtual space and a physical space at the same time. Experimenting takes different forms. The city of Philadelphia, its beloved city hall, was rebuilding the plaza, and they wanted an artwork for the 21st century. And I knew that netting didn't really speak to this history because it was the original site for the waterworks of Philadelphia, and the plaza was created when they knocked down this train station, the Pennsylvania Railroad, and I was thinking trains ran on steam, water, this is how industrial history happened. Could I bring water and transportation together to speak to this place? And so my idea was simple. I wanted to trace the path of the subway trains above ground using little tiny water particles, mist. And I went searching for a material. I found a failed commercial product. It was a video screen. They had sold 4, and the 5th one was in the back room. We dragged it out, and I started playing with light. And I was thinking, I've always loved the paintings of Mark Rothko. Like, instead of trying to make this a video screen, what if we take it for what it is and try and enhance that? And so I was thinking, like, as if you could walk into a Rothko painting. And it requires 3 different light sources blending in order to create the kind of color I needed. And it opened to the public to great pleasure and fun, because you don't know when the subway is coming. You could just be walking and suddenly here comes the green line. And the particles of water are so tiny that you can be in a business suit and not get wet. But if you're wanting to get wet, you just stay there. And it's the sense of play, but also that you're getting to know your city. If you pay attention, the green line is often late, or there's more movement from east to west. And oh, by the way, you've just missed your train. I got a call from Germany saying they'd read I used the choreography of wind, but could I work with the human body? Well, I had no idea. This was a completely unknown field for me. But their choreographer helped me explore how we could amplify human movement by connecting to the human body. For example, the head. So here is my sculpture connected to the head of one of these classical ballet dancers in Stuttgart, Germany. And then I began to reach out to new choreographers. This is working at Princeton, where one of your faculty members from Hofstra was at the time doing his doctoral work. We began doing these workshops to explore with students how we could shape nets and hold human bodies in motion and measure the forces and how that transformed them. Interconnectedness and our climate is essential for, I think, all of us to understand and be part of in terms of a solution. If it's ever going to happen, it's by working together. And one of my new commissions is in the Dallas area, which I discovered was on the migration path of the monarch butterfly. And so here is the piece called Butterfly Rest Stop. You can see how large it is. But what you can't see is that underneath it, there are 3,384 plants that are part of the artwork that are pollinator-sustaining plants. Because I think it's important. This is not only about bringing our attention to our interconnectedness. Our future doesn't exist without pollinators. We wouldn't be able to eat. But I also think the art needs to sustain them. Here you can see it. And the last piece I'm going to share is one that opens tomorrow. This is the result of a collaboration the last 3 years at MIT with an engineer named Caitlin Mueller, one of their professors. And I began looking at the history of climate. That's on the left is the last 22,000 years. Since the last ice age. And on the right is the work of a group of MIT climate scientists looking at how changing human behavior will change different outcomes. And I was thinking about the Sistine Chapel, how there's this moment that is charged between two sides, and that was the way I was mapping the history on the left and the potential future trajectories on the right. And here's the analysis in our software of these forces and the way that I have drawn them and the way that these different futures start to separate. And well, we were just installing it, so we don't have final photos yet, but here you can see the work as it goes up the stairs at MIT. And I just close because the newest dance performance is really exploring what it means to live in our climate right now. What does it mean to live in our political world right now when even the ground we walk on is no longer solid? And when you move, you affect the shape of the world of someone else. The piece is called No Lead to Marry. how do we go through the world in this moment without fear and explore how communal action can create the world that we want. Now, I don't know if our sound is working here, because you should be hearing this, but you can see it, even if you can't hear it. And I close by just acknowledging it's a team sport, that if we only did what we could do by ourselves, we wouldn't be able to do much of anything. Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone who has questions, please go to the mic, because we are recording, so we want to capture everything. Thank you.
And if your AV person can get us sound, I'd be happy to share that little video clip if we can get that rolling. I don't know. Questions? Small questions are fine. Personal questions from students, faculty? Yes.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Hi.
I'm Sasha, the director of the museum on campus.
Oh, so nice to meet you.
You're speaking my language. Thank you. And thank you for sharing your inspiring and truly interdisciplinary work. So while I was looking at your pieces, I feel like I heard them.
Yeah.
So this kind of is a layup maybe to getting the video to work. Do you think of sound or music when you're creating the pieces? And then also, how do you determine the ideal height for a sculpture?
Let me take the height question first, because it's a very practical one. So I want the pieces as close to you as possible because they're more intimate and compelling. And so that's what brings them down. And what brings them up is really about protection from people touching them. Because we don't want, if people start swinging on them, that adds momentum. So usually it's about, and also the city pieces have to be above the ambulance and fire truck height, so about 14 feet typically. In terms of sound, they actually have their own sound. If you listen carefully, you hear the wind. It brings you into nature. So I have done some pieces where I created a soundtrack with sound artists, like the piece on the beach I showed you. And I love working with sound, but I haven't had as many opportunities to do that. And this dance that I'm showing you pictures of, we have live original soundtrack being performed while the dancers move. So yes, some works there is sound, and then others it's about paying attention and listening to the sound of the world. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely question. Yes.
Hi, my name is Russ. I'm a filmmaker and teach screenwriting here. This was extraordinary. Thank you. My question is about your development of the shapes, and wondering if you could talk about if you've noticed any sort of pattern in terms of your conviction of when you know you have arrived at the shape that you want to make. Like, yeah.
Well, like I was sharing that North Carolina piece where I started mapping the history of railroads and textile mills, and then suddenly I had brought home this like seed pod from the park where the piece was, and it was like, whoa, I'm done. Yeah. So sometimes it kind of reveals itself. I think as I get older, I'm able to recognize that I don't have to overwork something. Like when and maybe for you as a screenwriter, like when you get to that place where it feels natural, I think it's the naturalness that I'm looking for. When I hit naturalness, then I stop.
Cool. Thank you.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, great.
How do you know when to stop?
Perhaps that's why I'm asking. No, I think you're waiting for a certain amount of clarity, and I sort of recognize in your work that your pieces are so devoted to the idea of kind of essential or organic, or like the kind of removal of extraness, and and so I'm definitely kind of using that to think about my own practice and how my own practice is devoted to that, and who knows when that conviction comes. But I do think that it's sort of in the making. I love how much of your work is developed sort of with the question of what it is becoming. I kind of relate to that also, and kind of doing work to find what it is, I think is a beautiful part of what you make.
In writing, the writing is difficult for me, but the process that kind of organically happened for me in writing the TED Talk is now something I use to get only the essential and to get rid of any excess words. Yeah. And so I would speak it into a microphone on my computer and translate it into script, transcribed, cut out everything I could, and then read it again and repeat over and over until every word that could be gotten rid of was.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if that's kind of what we're on the same wavelength about that, of getting rid of the extraneous.
Yes, absolutely.
In dialogue in a screenplay or.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for your question. Yes.
Hey, you've obviously traveled a lot. I was wondering if it was ever like a hassle for you, because I know some people they get homesick, and I don't know if you.
Yeah, it does happen. I'm homesick now, but I'm just thriving on the energy of connecting and sharing and hearing from you and connecting around ideas. So I think both can be true at the same time.
And also, was it ever a hassle to, like, you obviously have to bring your artwork onto the plane and stuff? Was that ever, like, did you ever have any issues with that?
Oh my gosh, well, lots. That was an issue. Now I don't bring them on planes with me. I have learned from each experience, and I prepare more.
What was your favorite destination, if you don't mind me asking?
My favorite destination? It's like saying, which is your favorite child or something, like, who do you love the most? I'll have to think about that.
All right, then, thank you.
It's an interesting question. How about you? What's yours?
As of now, probably Roatan in Honduras. It's a small island.
I have
It was
been to
really nice.
Roatan
Yeah.
and diving there.
Yeah, it's real fun. The waters are really
special.
nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm actually excited to hear about Honduras. I'm headed there in December.
Oh, talk to her.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about the makeup of your team. Obviously, you have artists and engineers, but who else do you have among your crew?
So I try to keep a really small crew in-house. I have a really dedicated team that fluctuates between maybe 3 and 7 people, because I read somewhere that if you have more than 8 people, you need hierarchy. And kind of everybody, the person who does like the accounting is also an art critic for the work. Like, we're all doing everything in a way, and it's very lively. And but in-house, we have architects, we have people with graduate degrees from MIT in sort of like computational design and art history graduates who do a lot of the management. And then outside, our biggest collaborators are all different kinds of engineers: aeronautical engineers, structural engineers, lighting designers, architects, landscape architects, historians, climate scientists. It all depends on each project. We had botanists for that one piece. So I think that's what I love about this practice, is I'm reaching out to paleontologists, and it's just so interesting. Legal scholars. Ketanji Brown Jackson wanted the piece Bending Arc to be in a civil rights law journal, and she connected me with someone. So I think I just like to learn. Where we started this whole thing as a college student, I just want to always be learning.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Hi. So I I looked up your Instagram. Wow. And I saw I saw that ETC Lighting was following you. Do you use them like for like most of your pieces?
I use them in many of my pieces. They have additional colors that like a regular RGB LED light doesn't have. They have like an amber, and so I love them. Why? Maybe afterwards, come talk to me. Tell me how you know what they are. And is light something that you teach here? No,
I don't know.
No, you just know it. Okay, it's not a Hofstra theater design, lighting design course, is it? Oh, you do teach that. So, yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Yes.
My question is, even with the beauty of each of your pieces, do you ever see them in their finished product and wish you'd done something different?
Always. I always have an idea in my mind of something more. I'm constantly making little changes at the last minute. That's just who I am. And I recognize that that's just the way it is. You know, if you write something, do you ever kind of want to go back and change a little word or two? So it's just like that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you make all these beautiful, gorgeous works. I was wondering if you ever have encountered doubt or fear within your works, and if so, like how have you overcome that or all those negative emotions?
There is doubt in every single one of them. And I wish I could tell you that, like with each new commission, I just knew I could do it, and I can't. There's struggle in each one of them. How do I overcome it? I think the trick goes back to what I shared at the beginning of like the letter from my mom. Like make 99 paintings. The equivalent of that is like just to keep iterating. So I might have had 99 different models for each of these projects. But to not be so focused on judging them, but to sort of let it evolve and just get better each time and turn it upside down, take it apart. You know, I'm always going back. Like we'll sort of develop something and everybody's kind of there. They think that's it. And I'm like, that is not good enough. We got to rip that up, take it apart, turn it around, build it from scratch. Each time we do that, it gets better. It's sort of like writing also. Like you write something and sometimes you, like if you lose the document and you have to rewrite it, you rewrite it better and shorter and clearer. So I think the impediment has a lot to do with judgment. And sometimes judgment is good. It's good to be analytical, to be better, but not where the judgment kind of stymies you and locks you up. So if you can just like observe and then just like keep iterating, give yourself runway to make 98 bad drafts for your paper or whatever it is, problem sets. I think that's the way of just letting it grow, and then it can be its better self. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you so much.
And also not focusing on praise. Like if you're not seeking that outside response, that also enables you to be a little freer to get to where you are happy with it. Yeah. Yes.
I was going to ask a different question, but I think you answered it, which was really to talk a little bit to this group of students about your career path, but not yours specifically, but sort of what you learned about the nonlinear sort of path that you took towards just tremendous success, and how you think about how you got there. Again, not even necessarily as an artist, but just as somebody moving through life into a career. But I think you may have just answered it. But if you want to say anything more about that.
I guess there are two things I might say in response to that. One is a saying that my late husband would often say, you must be present to win. It's about showing up. If it was difficult for me to get here today. But I thought, I just need to show up. Here is the president of a university who is thinking about beauty. I need to show up. And I think in all of these works, there's something about, you're kind of feeling tired. You don't feel like going to class, or I don't know what it is, but you must be present to win. For sure, if you don't apply for that fellowship, you won't get it. You might not get it anyway, but for sure, if you don't show up, if you're not present, you will not win. So I think that that's kind of a motto that kind of I push myself whenever I'm on the fence, like just show up. And then the other was also an observation from my partner in the projects. And he said, Janet, you are always moving the goalposts. And I wasn't aware of that at all, but it was sort of like you went to make a set of painting exhibitions, but you ended up making netting sculptures. It's like, okay, all right, move the goalposts. And then like with each of these things, like a lot of things don't go right. They don't, or it's not what I intended. But like the carpet at the Smithsonian and people like, lying down at like, I didn't want that. I didn't want a carpet, didn't want to make a carpet, and yet that, and then being nimble enough to let go of what I thought I wanted and run with, to move the goalposts. So those are the two things I would share with students. You must be present to win, and don't be afraid to move the goalposts. Yeah. Is that a good place to stop? I think maybe we should stop right there. I'll talk to you afterwards, okay? Thank you. And you're welcome to get one now, or you can get one later. But if you get them now, I am here to sign them. Yeah, or they're available at your bookstore. These are from your bookstore anyway. But I'm here. Thank you so much.